So we have now the Masorah, or the so-called Jewish Torah, has a lot of Persian, the later Persian mythology and Persian form because of the captivity, but the original Moses version is the Ethiopic one and not the Masoretic one, which really has been tainted by the Babylonian captivity and the later rendition of the Persian so-called mythology. And this can be shown by comparison with the Parsi Bun Dahish, or the Aboriginal creation, more literally, the creation of the beginning. Indeed, we may even suspect that the first words of the Hebrew Genesis have to do with the title of the Bundahish, and they are Bereshith Elohim bara and Bereshith, which literally translated reads, in the beginning of, leaving an ellipsis, without stating in the beginning of what, which is interesting. You would notice something. It doesn't state in the beginning of what. Now, the meaning of the word Bundahish is the creation of the beginning. Now, this far more perfect statement seems to have been bungled by some scribes or Pharisees in adapting it for the latter Masoretic or traditional Hebrew version or reversion, or the other version outside of the original Ethiopic, which gives us the true insight into the true Mosaic version. Now, the first two facts, right, it's distinguishable in the external phenomena by man, were those of darkness and light. In other words, the first two phenomena that man noticed was to distinguish darkness and light. Now, the panorama of mythological representation is drawn out from these as its opening scenes, and the long procession of the various powers of nature, which became, at some stage, divinities. Some say a later stage, these powers of nature became divinized. Some even say they became anthropomorphized. And what Moses was doing, by learning this in the wisdom, but seeing what the anthropomorphication, the personification of these aspects did, and how many of the so-called worshipers in that later stage of the Kamite mythology had lost the original focus and the original emphasis of the original revelation. So what Moses did was restore it to its original Yahwist, because the ancient Kamites were actually Yahwists from the very beginning. They recognized Yahweh, they recognized the Amen. But at that later stage, after these powers of the Netaru, or powers of the nature, became divinities and therefore personified, you understand, and identified, you understand, with various different cults and gnomes, and became more like a religious, like denominationalism, like where one says they're Baptists, and the next one says, well, they're evangelists, and the next one says they're Pentecostalists. But wait, isn't baptism part of it, the way of Christ? Isn't Pentecost part of it? Isn't the good news or the evangelism part of it? How they break these things down into different? The same thing happened in ancient Egypt. That's what's called the bondage. So this long process where the powers of nature became divinities at a later stage, it starts upon its march through heaven above to cast now a shade or a shadow on the earth below. You understand? On the earth below. So what happened, one focused on the shadow and forgot that which projected the shadow from the heavens. That's why Genesis 1 and 4 is very, very interesting, where it says about the sun, the moon, and the stars. Let them be for signs and seasons and days and years, not to worship them or propitiate them, but they are for signs and seasons and days and years. The heavens is a clockwork as well as a revelation, you understand, for us below. It casts its shadow down here below. Now, by observing this alternation of light and darkness, a primary measure of time was first established as the creation of a night and a day, marked by the twin star. And, quote, there was evening and there was morning one day, end quote. As the result of this earliest creation of the beginning. Now, in the Persian, the Bundahish, we find there's the deity Ahura Mazda. He is the chief of the 7 Amhaspans, just as the creator Ptah or Ptah is of the 7 Chnemu, and the Gnostic Yaldabaoth of the 7 Elohim. Now, here we learn that Elohim, or God, created the world in 6 periods, although not in 6 days as the Eurocentric Christianity falsely falsified and claimed. Now, the first of Ahura Mazda's creatures of the world, guess which one it was? Well, based on what we've learned from the ancient KAMITE and also what Moses learned from those mystery or wisdom schools, the first of even Ahura Mazda's creatures of the world was the sky. And his good thought, by good procedure, produced the light of the world. Now, this is identical with the Elohim seeing the light, that it was good, Malcolm. And with the barakat, or the blessing pronounced on his creations by the Egyptian deity, or the Egyptian Netaru, the Elohim. Now, the light now separated, and it distinguished from darkness in the creation of time is quite distinct from the Melokotawi, the divine, or Misaliyawi Anegager, the more abstract, or the illimitable and eternal light already existing with Ahura Mazda. It is the evening and morning, one day. Now, the darkness and light are personified, and they are represented as being at ceaseless enmity with each other in the confusion of the chaos. But they come to an understanding as co-creators and make a covenant, a word agreement, a al-kidan, in appointing this primeval period of time, this original reckoning of time and calculation, with evening first and then the morning, and that being defined as one day. And such was the first creation according to the Persian series of 6. Quote, and of Ahura's creatures in the world, it is said, the first was the sky, the second water, the third earth, the fourth plants, the fifth animals, and the sixth humanity or mankind. End quote. Now, the creation of light in the Hebrew, Bereshith or Bereshith, is the creation of the sky in and according to the Babylonian or the Persian. And the creation of water in the Persian Genesis or the Persian Bereshith becomes the dividing of the waters in the Hebrew, in the Hebraic version. The time of this creation is called the second day. Now, the third of the Persian creation is that of the earth, which is the dry land of the Hebrew. Quote, and the Elohim created the dry land, and the Elohim called the dry land earth, Eretz, called the dry land earth.